All right, so think about those moments in history, the ones that just completely change the course of a nation.
Yeah.
For Britain, one of those moments, no doubt, has got to be June 1948 with the arrival of the HMT Empire Windrush.
Big moment.
Huge moment. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The story of the Windrush, specifically through this book by K.N. Chimbiri, The Story of the Windrush. We've got this super in-depth Windrush book research document plan to help guide us.
Okay, great.
So our mission today is to really break down the most important parts of this story for you. Like, why does this even matter? Why are we still talking about it today? So we're going to look at the arrival itself. Who were these people that were on board? What was going on in the world at the time? The big themes that come out of all of this, and, learn a little bit about the author herself.
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's jump right in. June 1948, a ship pulls into London. What is it about this arrival that makes it such a turning point?
So it's not just about people arriving from the Caribbean, right? There were black people in Britain before this. It's the sheer number of people arriving at once. Hundreds of them. It's like this huge, visible change.
Yeah, like you can't ignore it anymore.
Exactly. It kind of forces everyone to deal with this new multicultural reality in a way that they hadn't before. I mean, smaller communities had existed, but this was different. This was a real shift, a visible shift.
A turning point. And it seems like Chimbiri's book really focuses on those first experiences, like the hopefulness and the stories of those early arrivals.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The story of the Windrush is all about those pioneers, the ones who made that journey. It celebrates their bravery and their dreams. It's more about that first step onto British soil and what they were hoping for, less about the struggles they faced later on.
You hear that phrase, Windrush generation pioneers, and it just feels weighty. What does that tell us about those people?
It really highlights their place as like the first wave of this major migration from the Caribbean to Britain after World War II. They were the trailblazers setting the stage for everyone who came after. And what Chimbiri does so well is she focuses on their personal stories, their individual experiences and perspectives.
Yeah, that's got to be way more impactful than just looking at like statistics and numbers, right?
Exactly. It makes you human.
So can you give us an example of one of those pioneers that the book talks about?
Oh, absolutely. There's Samuel King, usually just called Sam King. He's a great example. He served in the RAF during World War II, so he's already shown his commitment to Britain. Then, after he arrived on the Windrush, he worked in the Postal Service and eventually became the first black mayor of Southwark. I mean, what an achievement.
Wow, from the RAF to mayor. That's an amazing journey. So what were some of the biggest reasons that these folks decided to make such a huge life change? Why leave their homes and travel thousands of miles to a new country?
Well, there were a few things going on. The book talks about this desire for better opportunities, especially economic ones. People felt like those opportunities were greater in Britain.
Yeah.
And there was this feeling of connection to Britain as the mother country. It was this complex colonial legacy that carried a lot of weight. And after living through World War II, many were looking for a fresh start, a chance to build a better future.
I can only imagine the mix of emotions they must have been feeling. Excited, nervous, hopeful.
Yeah, definitely. A whole mix. And the journey itself must have been quite an undertaking. Crossing the Atlantic back then wasn't exactly a quick trip.
No kidding. Not like hopping on a plane these days.
Right. It was weeks at sea, this massive journey from the Caribbean islands. The book mentions Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago specifically. And can you imagine what that experience was like? All those people together for weeks, the camaraderie, the uncertainty of what awaited them. It's mind-boggling.
And like you said, this wasn't just about the people on that one ship. It was the beginning of something much bigger.
Absolutely. It marked the start of a massive wave of Caribbean immigration that has shaped the multicultural Britain we know today.
It's impossible to imagine Britain without it.
And you can't understand this story without thinking about what was happening in Britain after World War II. The country was devastated, right? Trying to rebuild its infrastructure, its economy. And so they actively encouraged people from the Caribbean, who were British citizens at the time, to immigrate. They needed people to fill all these jobs.
So it was almost like an invitation.
In a way, yes. And the book highlights how the Windrush arrivals filled essential roles in areas like construction, public transportation, and the brand new National Health Service. They were vital to Britain's recovery.
But even with that invitation, things weren't always easy for them.
Right. And this is where the story of the Windrush makes such an important contribution. It really cements Black history as a key part of British history, not separate from it. It says this arrival in 1948 wasn't just a one-off event, it was the start of a major change. And while the book starts with this positive focus on arrival and contribution, it doesn't shy away from the fact that the Windrush generation and their descendants faced racism.
It's important to remember that it wasn't all sunshine and roses.
Absolutely. Alongside that racism, though, the book also really emphasizes the legacy of the Windrush pioneers, what they achieved in so many different areas of British life, from culture to public service to business. Their impact is huge, and their courage to make that journey to build new lives in a place that wasn't always welcoming. It's inspiring.
Yeah, you can't help but admire their resilience. So beyond those big historical and social themes, does the book also get into the more personal human experiences?
Oh, definitely. The research shows how the book explores these really important themes like empathy and kindness. It helps young readers understand what these people went through and connect with them on a human level. And it talks about family, the strong connections that were maintained across continents, the desire to create better lives for their children, the sadness of leaving home, even just the physical experience of that journey across the ocean. It all becomes part of the story.
And I imagine it also touches on the importance of inclusion and making sure these stories are heard.
Exactly. It's about making those voices visible and acknowledging the struggles they faced, the injustices they had to navigate.
It's amazing how one historical event can contain so many different important themes, both personal and societal. Now, Chimbiri's book isn't the only one telling this story to younger generations, is it?
No, not at all. There are lots of great books out there that explore similar themes. Windrush Child by Benjamin Zephaniah is a good example. It tells a story from a child's perspective. And John Agard has a book on a similar theme, too. Then there's Fluella Benjamin's Coming to England, which is her own personal story as a child immigrant. And Patrice Lawrence's Granny Came Here on the Empire Windrush, which offers this beautiful intergenerational view. It's amazing to see these different perspectives all coming together.
It really shows the power of telling these stories from many different angles. And it's all part of a bigger story, too, right? The story of Black and immigrant contributions to Britain.
Yeah, for sure. Books like Vashti Harrison's Little Leader series, which celebrates the achievements of Black women throughout history, and Shini Samara's 99 Immigrants Who Made Britain Great, they show how much immigrants from all different backgrounds have shaped British society in so many fields.
So the Windrush generation is part of this larger tapestry of contribution and achievement. It sounds like Kay and Chimbiri is a really important voice in bringing this history to life for younger audiences. What can you tell us about her as an author?
Well, one thing that really stands out is that she not only wrote the story of the Windrush, but she also did the illustrations herself. That's pretty unique.
Wow, that's impressive.
She first published it back in 2018 through her own company, Golden Destiny. That shows how passionate she was about getting this story out there. And then in 2020, Scholastic picked it up and republished it, which meant it could reach a much wider audience.
That's great. And the story of the Windrush is just one piece of her work highlighting Black history for kids, right?
Absolutely. She's written a bunch of other books like Secrets of the Afro Comb, The Story of Early Ancient Egypt, and Step Back in Time to Ancient Kush. She's clearly dedicated to making these stories accessible and engaging for young people.
And there's a personal connection for her to this story too, right?
Oh, definitely. Her parents were part of the Windrush generation. And that was a big part of why she wrote the story of the Windrush. She even started her own publishing company because she felt like there weren't enough authentic representations of Black history in children's books. It wasn't just about the writing either. She works with museums on exhibitions and educational programs, and she runs creative workshops for kids, all focused on these themes.
That's amazing. So she was born in London.
Right. But her parents were from Barbados, and she spent some of her childhood there.
Yeah.
So those experiences definitely shaped her views and her passion for this subject.
That makes sense. And it sounds like she's not slowing down anytime soon.
Nope. She's still working with Scholastic, and there's a new edition of The Story of Windrush coming out soon. She's committed to this work.
It's so inspiring to see someone so dedicated to sharing these important stories. So as we wrap up our discussion today, why does the story of the Windrush and Chimbiri's books specifically matter so much to us now?
Well, the story of the Windrush is essential because it really marks the beginning of modern Black Britain. It's a story about the incredible diversity that makes up the UK today. And it's so important to remember and honor the contributions and the bravery of the Windrush pioneers.
They really helped shape the country we know today.
Absolutely. They were crucial to rebuilding Britain after the war, and their legacy is still felt today. And it's also a reminder of the racism that Black people have faced in Britain. It's a history we need to understand if we want to have honest conversations about equality and justice.
It's about learning from the past to create a better future.
Exactly. By learning about their journeys and experiences, we can develop empathy and understand how important it is to treat everyone with dignity and respect. The legacy of the Windrush generation is one of resilience, contribution, and lasting impact. It's a story that deserves to be told and celebrated.
It's more than just a moment in time. It's the beginning of a transformation that continues to this day.
And as we finish up our deep dive into the story of the Windrush, I want to leave you with a question. How do you think the legacy of the Windrush generation is still shaping British society in the 21st century? How does understanding this history affect our conversations about national identity, immigration, and what it means to be British today? It's a story with huge implications, and it's more relevant now than ever.
Lots to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time. Bye.